This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for Care Notes with Doug Wilber. And we're going to do a little something different because I have a subject I want to talk about because I'm a little confused about it and I have concerns. Um, and so the subject really is about care facilities, how they have changed. Um, it almost seems like overnight, but I'm sure it hasn't been, um, where many of them started out as local care facilities, and you felt like you maybe were at home. You knew the people who worked there. You knew how to contact somebody if you wanted to check on a parent. If you were a resident there, you felt comfortable because it was your neighbors who were sort of in this facility with you. But it seems like many of them, whether it's because of cost or whatever, they've been sold to large corporations. And so trying to get anything answered or accomplished seems to be difficult. Now, those are the stories that I've been told. And as I've heard those stories, it concerns me because I'm hoping that I could live in my house and till the day I die and not be a burden
Right.
on anybody. Those were the words of my mother and mother-in-law. I don't want to be a burden on anybody. Um, but with two sons who live out of state, that may not be practical in the future. And
Right.
so you have a home care structure that um, I fell in love with the first time I heard you discussing it. Uh, you are really involved. You're not just the owner and the CEO, you're involved.
Right.
You talk to your employees, you talk to your clients. That to me is important. So, am is what I'm hearing happening? And if it is, how can we help those families either learn to communicate better or um, continue to pull their families out of there?
Right. Well, the the truth is we're in a world that is rapidly changing in general. So, like in the past where you had the local supermarket, I mean, this is this is for our older audience, but where you had independent supermarkets, and so you would know them and people very well. The consolidation happened, and I think that's really what's happened um, in the nursing home field is that people are buying, and then there one group is gobbling up another group, and then they get gobbled up, and then they get gobbled up. So there's a lot of gobbling going
Yep.
on. So, so and the fact is, um, you do lose something in that. Now, there's at times efficiencies of scale and other things, but what you worry about in that is a couple of things. One is, when it's a neighbor that is helping you, and it's a neighbor, oftentimes there's that sense that they care, and in many cases, I think the operations that have developed, at least I'll say in the Cleveland area, there were a lot of families that did this and they developed it, and they were very caring about, doing conscientious about doing what they were doing. So but you get into a large corporation, and I've seen this happen where you'll have a director over a building, and if they're not getting a certain census, they're bumping that person.
Right.
And even if they are, maybe if they weren't politically, handling things exactly right, they're bumped from the building. So you don't have that ongoing consistency that I think can make a difference. And I think the nursing home business, or entities, this has played out and will continue to play out for a number of years to come. One of the things I worry about, and I, we live in a capitalist society. I don't disagree with the ideas around profitability and some of the things that are good about our system. At all. I don't begrudge that, because I think, sometimes at least there's a motive that someone has to do the right thing,
Right.
or else they'll lose business. It may not be for the right motive, but the end is still there, that they have to do good or do the right thing.
Sure.
And so I think that part of it, drives people to continue to pursue better and better. But that personal, that touching of lives, you have a much higher chance, I think, of losing that as you become more corporate. And so I do think there's a danger, and I do think that danger, and especially with as much gobbling as has happened, we're seeing it, and we're seeing it played out. And unfortunately, I think your friends or acquaintances that you were talking about are seeing it enough that they're wanting to leave the situations. Yeah.
And I'm hearing a lot of that. It's, the message I'm getting from them is, you know what, maybe I should be a home care individual. And when I've asked, why, they say, because my passion is to make things right. And I can't do that and they'll say, I helped get, 20 clients moved in. And, when I did, I knew what the situation was, and I promised them certain things based on what I could promise. And now things have changed. But if I was in home care, I'd be there for a specific individual or individuals, and I'd be able to do it the right way. And when I asked what is the right way, they said, like somebody who's part of your family. And I thought about that heavily because, my real experience with facilities is with my mother. And she was independent, but yet they still checked on her if they thought there was an issue. There was a hierarchy of who to call in our family, and we got those phone calls as we were supposed to. They helped us make decisions because being a distance away, sometimes I had no idea. I learned about UTIs and how it can confuse a person. Where I remember the first time I got that phone call, it was like, well, I get them and I don't get confused. And I was
Right.
also told, well, you're not a senior with other medical issues.
Right.
And so I was lucky with my mom, but I hear others who are telling me that they're getting a phone call when EMS is called to take mom or dad to the hospital, and there's been a problem for 2 or 3 days, but they didn't know how to address it. So let's talk about your home caregivers. If they walk in and they see that, their client there's something off, what do they do?
So yeah, if they see something off, in all likelihood, they're either going to call the family or they're going to call the office, and say, hey, Mrs. Jones is having an issue that seems strange. She seems very confused. And they may talk to our nurse, they may talk to one of the care managers or a director or me. And, they're going to, the most likely you were going to say, hey, yeah, this does sound, of a concern, and let's get something done. It could be, call the family. Hey, I think your mom needs to go to, an urgent care center, a hospital, whatever, or, even worst case scenario, um, call EMS and get them transported somewhere and, remain with the client, generally unless the family's meeting there so that they have an advocate
Right.
when they're going there. But I think there's a couple, things that what that shows, um, inadvertently or, or not, the why home care is different. So let me tell you a typical scenario
Okay.
that can happen in a facility or a hospital, even ones that are well run, give report, whatever, but you're having a lot of staff move in and out and in and out. And so I'll give you an example of something that could happen, and does happen way, way, way too often. So you have a person and they have a UTI, so they're confused. But let's say the day before they were normal, there was no issue, no problems whatsoever, and then somehow in that process they develop the UTI, and it doesn't take long to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour as far as having, septic complications and other things where someone will be totally out of their mind. So using the scenario that I'm talking about, um, the crazy thing is the nurse the day before saw her in her right mind. Everything was normal, well, whatever. The next nurse or aide that walks in, maybe she falls asleep in between, person wakes up, she's totally in a different place. They don't have that baseline. They don't see, and they may just make an assumption that that is the way she always is.
Right.
She's always has this dementia. And if you don't think that assumption gets made, it gets made every single day in hospitals and facilities around the country because of that continuity. And that's where I think there is something really wonderful about home care, is because you're getting the same people. So they have that baseline. They're seeing this is not, the Norma that I know, or,
Sure.
that this is someone that is very, very different, and there's a problem. And then they'll get there'll be an intervention. Well, we got to do something. This is, and the second part of it is also there. Not only is it one-on-one, which we've talked about a lot, but this is a real person. And it's really easy to objectify people when you're in a facility. Old person with, even the way someone is described, a 92-year-old woman with early onset dementia, uh, stage 3 kidney disease, and coronary artery disease, as well as heart failure. And so it's not Mrs. Jones. It's an 82-year-old woman with these conditions. Right. Whereas with a caregiver in the house with that person, they're not objectified like that. Lord willing, they're not. This is my, I'll use the term Norma before, obviously not associated with any particular person. It's just a name. But this is my Norma. this is my, Daniel. And it's very personal, as you mentioned before. It is like your grandma, your mother, your sister, your brother, where there's that close relationship. And Lord willing, again, that advocacy. I want what's best for this person. I care for this person. Dare say I love this person, and that comes with relationship, and relationship is built usually over time, and that's one of the wonders and wonderful parts of doing home care, because you really do get that, and that solves a lot of problems. I'll go to one thing. I've said this before, but care needs to be done by people who care. So that's why we try to spend as much time as we do in the hiring process to try to figure out, is this someone who's actually going to care about another person? And the if we can get those people, and that's who we aim to get, if we can get those people, so much of the other issues tend to fall in line in not having issues with our employees. And again, all employees, there are problems that can happen, but when it's personal, you wouldn't imagine leaving the person you're caring for, that you're responsible for, in a bad situation. And yeah, so those are the things I think that empower and are the best of what home care can be and do.
Well, and I love the word empower because, you know, I had a situation a couple days ago. Um, I have a rod in my left femur, and I woke up in the morning, my hip hurt, my femur hurt, and it was going down to my foot. And it was like, this happened 7 years ago. I haven't had a problem. And all of a sudden I realized I was limping. And my orthopedic doctor is no longer practicing, so I had to find somebody else. And I basically they didn't care what my name was. They didn't care about my history. When they heard I was 72 years old, they said, "Oh, you must have broken your hip. Get to the emergency room." And I said, "Well, I did some research about this. And if I broke my hip, would I be able to walk? I don't have the pain all the time. But when I do, it's intense." Well, they kept saying, "No, you got to go to the emergency room." So I did not go to the emergency room. I started, treating it with heat and elevating it. And all of a sudden it got better. Now it got worse the next day. But I realized that what is happening in most of our institutions is what you just said. They think that once you hit a certain age, number one, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand. And it must be, "Oh, you said your hip. Oh, you must have broken it." I finally got through to my general practitioner and I talked to him, and he went through my file and he said, "You had this problem about 4 years ago,
Mhm.
and it was during a weather change." He said, "Do things normally. If it gets worse, yeah, maybe you should go to the ER. But I don't think you have to go to the ER. And just because you're 72 doesn't mean you broke your hip."
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I love about your y- your company, and the fact that you drill down when you interview uh, people to work for you, because as you once said, you can't teach them compassion. You can teach them the things that they have to look for, maybe how to help somebody up out of a chair, all these little things. But if they have compassion, they're going to learn and they're going to do things the right way.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately, um, we increasingly are in a world where it's really hard to find those people. And that's, part of the reason we try to treat our people very, very well so that we retain those individuals. Because, they, in the end, um, that's who you're going to want, to do your care. And it's definitely who you want to do your family members' care. And I think that in the end, that, that heart thing, the other pieces come into play. I mean, the truth is that's true in any job, a little bit differently, because there's a little more of the compassion end of things in home care. But the single most important indicator of how well a person will do on a job is how conscientious they are. So if you have someone conscientious and they cannot imagine ever missing work or not finishing something or whatever, that's in them. And the sort of their name gets stamped on that, and they're going to be conscientious with what they do. And those are the people that in general you want working for you. Well, is that common? No. I mean, that's an uncommon trait. That's why, you know, um, certain people rise to the top. And so often, if you look at it, they're just conscientious. I mean, really,
Yep.
that's it. They're just conscientious. They, won't do a half job. They will see it through, do the right thing, and just try to do right with whatever they do. And more often than not, I mean, it's not 100% taught by our parents, but our parents have a big influence on that. And then you have people that just they're built that way. That's who they are, and but it more often than not, it's somehow ingrained in them at a younger age, and then they carry that through life, and end up being that with whatever they do and whoever they're with.
Well, and as a
So
parent, you hope you are teaching your children those things. Um,
right.
and it's interesting when you were talking about that. So many people, my son is on the spectrum, and so many people over the years said, you know what, he's never really going to hold down a job, and he's whatever. And he would argue with them. He'd go, just watch me. Um, and so he took this job down in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and talk about conscientious. I mean, we saw that in him, but now we're seeing it, and his employers are saying the same thing, that when you believe in something that you want to do, you do it, and you
Right.
do it with grace. And I think that goes across the board because, um, I see so many people today that they just want to make assumptions about who people are and what you need. Um, I have a neighbor here who, I guess, he doesn't have children who are compassionate enough. He should not be alone, and he admits it. He should not be alone. And we all take part in trying to help him the best way we can, but we're not his family. We don't have the money to put into it, but he shouldn't be alone. So when we see that he's alone, somebody will say, hey, I'm going to go knock on his door and, sit and watch TV with him, or I'm going to take dinner to him. Um, and his family sees it and they're all excited that the neighbors are doing this. But you do it because you want somebody hopefully to do it for you someday if you need it.
Right.
Uh, And that's how I started out asking you before we went online that, with my sons living out of town and, I've asked them, so if I needed help, w- what would you do? Well, we never want you to go into a facility, but how would you know I was being taken care of properly at home? Well, we wouldn't. We'd have to trust. And trust is a
Right.
good thing, but like you said in the beginning, there's more to it. But as I talked that over with them, then I'm hearing friends telling me, you know, it's not just because of COVID they took their parents out of a facility. It's because they realized that their parents' needs weren't being taken care of.
Right, right.
And
Yeah,
as
and
children, we're not qualified really to take care of our parents.
yeah, I mean, let's face it, it's like so many things. There is not a manual saying this is how you take care of your parents, or this is how you take care of a spouse. You know, it um, it really doesn't exist, or maybe it does, and it's on Amazon somewhere. But but the reality of things are that we we learn as we go. Life is really kind of messy, so you end up going and you're things pop up, and very rarely I will find that occasional person, and they have it all planned out, and usually they're those pre-planners. They have the long-term care insurance, and they've done this and that and the other thing, and moved into the house that doesn't have any steps, and had it so you have a roll-in shower, for a wheelchair. I mean, you go down the line, and they've done all those things, so that um, so that they could, you know, um, so that they could end up aging in place with everything planned. I had someone who recently, realized there was a health concern with a spouse, and started, jumped into, get help before things got more significant, and a lot of help before things got significant, even though at that point in time they didn't need it, to the degree that they got it. But it was so that as things changed, they would be ready. Well, how often does that happen? Not very often. And then, but as I was mentioning, you kind of learn these things. You grow into it. You say, okay, what do you need to do here? You pull on this expert, that expert, and then in a short period of time, like you did with your mom, all of a sudden you're realizing the UTI does this, this does that, and stuff that you would never even imagine, that you would be considering. Depends, and this and that, you know and you develop that expertise, you know by the fact that you absolutely have to.
Right.
So you're much more of an expert now
Yeah.
than you were 15 years ago.
And well, and none of us want to become those experts.
Yeah.
We hope it won't come to that, but we're living longer. Um, and adult children are much older with their parents. And so sometimes the adult children aren't able to do some of the things that need to be done. My oldest son said to me one day, um, you had me when you were young, and uh, when you need me to take care of you, I'm going to be old. And I said, well, I didn't do that on purpose. I'm really sorry. And then my youngest one says, you had me when you were old, and you're going to ruin my young life. And it's like, oh, parents just, but they understand what has happened in this world. They've seen it firsthand. So I'm sort of lucky that they understand that, uh, You just don't want to put somebody in an institution and hope the
Yeah.
institution takes care of them. My big thing, and how do you find the people that you do? You seem to find um very compassionate people, and many of them listen to this podcast. I don't know if you knew that, because every once in a while I'll get a comment. I just love working for uh Cherished Companions. And it's like, wow, that's wonderful. And we don't solicit that. But
Yeah.
every once in a while, or somebody will say, um, I know somebody who works for Cherished Companions, and they just love not only their client, but they love the company. So, I know you're not paying people to say this, but how do you get these wonderful people?
I think there's a few things. One is we're always fishing, so we're always looking for good people, because there's normal attrition. You're gonna have attrition, and so we always are out and interviewing and trying to figure out who's going to be good. We have a lot of people. What I find is, there's people are interconnected, and so l- like attracts like oftentimes, and so when you have a really good caregiver, one of the things I've seen over the years is that they'll often bring people that are like them in. So a good caregiver will almost always recommend another good caregiver. And I've also found the other, someone who's not so good will oftentimes bring someone who's not so good if they make a recommendation. So, we rely on our our staff to recommend people that are good. And so, I take in, there's flashing lights when I see a really outstanding caregiver who recommends someone. I am almost always saying, yeah, I think I really want to get this person interviewed, and see what they're made of, because I have a feeling they're made of good stuff. Um, we treat our people well. Um, I don't know if I told you this. We do surveys, and that I know I've told you before, but our staff was meeting with our representative, someone that we work with, because we really try to dig through and analyze and understand
Sure.
the data as best as we can. And it's there's our surveys go both with our clients and with our caregivers. So we get an overall picture of the organization with ongoing surveys every month. And we pour through those things. And there is a score that they call the Net Promoter Score. It's basically, um, how do your people, whether the people you're talking about be your clients in one case or your caregivers in another case, um, how enthusiastic are they about you? Like what percentage of your people are detractors? They would not recommend you. How many people are neutral? Yeah, work for this company, work for another company. And how many people are like actively promoting? They're cheerleaders. They love the company, like you're alluding to. And I'm proud of my staff. This isn't about me. I have a really good staff in HR and in our scheduling, and just the whole internal office is a really good team of people. They're those conscientious people, whatever. And and anyway, the guy said, I have never seen scores like this. You are, I think we're almost 2 points higher than the nation on a scale of 10, for the net promoter
Sure.
score. And he said, I've never seen these type of results. And I think he was kind of saying the same question, well, what do you do? And ultimately, I think what we do is we care about people. I mean, we care about our clients, and we care about our staff. And so even when we have to pull someone in for discipline, we typically call it counseling, because our purpose is not to get you, not to do it. I'm hoping, unless it's a really bad thing, obviously,
Sure.
there's a bad thing, we have to let someone go or whatever. But if it's something that we can move them along, we can help them to change that behavior, understand the behavior and change it. We want to counsel them into different behaviors. We want them to succeed. We're not trying to just slap their hand for slapping their hand's sake. We want to, elicit, a response saying, we care about you. Here's how you can be better at what you do, and hopefully, win them into, different actions, different behaviors. And I think that it's that attitude, it's that direction that really makes a difference, and I do think your employees are ultimately, they're the ones doing the work. And so, if you get those right people, if you uncover that heart thing, whatever. So, and, lastly, just to kind of, wrap up what you had asked, and is that, when we do our interviews, when we use methods to be able to uncover that. And that's a little bit of our secret sauce, so I won't reveal that too much.
Well, I love the secret sauce, and that's why I love doing these podcasts, because you're very forthright. You know, you tell it like it is, but I can I know from people who have known you for a long time that you're real. Um, I also find it interesting that you came from corporate America to do something in corporate America. Typically, is doesn't have a lot of passion, but yet you knew that that's where you wanted to be, and that to me, is a good indication that you're sharing that with your employees, your staff, your clients, and uh, I hope I never have to be your client, but if I ever got to that
I hope
point
you
in my
don't have to
life,
be either.
um, I want somebody there who treats me with compassion, because I've seen too many other scenarios, and it's sad because as we get older, we say things that maybe we shouldn't say. We do things that maybe we wouldn't have done before. And that doesn't mean that we are going to be bad people. So,
Right, yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I've learned over the years is that, one of and yeah, during these podcasts, I talk a lot. So, you may not be seeing or perceiving this as much, but one of the most important things that I can do is listen, whether it be listening to the clients, or listening to our caregiving staff, or my internal staff, to be able to figure out what's going on. Even when someone calls up and they're upset about something, the most important thing I've learned over the years is listen to it. Don't try to defend, don't try to whatever, listen to, um what someone is saying. Interesting. I was just talking to someone, and they decided to leave, not use our services anymore. And so I I said, look at, is there any reason why you're leaving, and I said, I'd rather know. I don't, the truth will set me free.
Right, exactly.
It's
Yeah.
it's not going to. I mean, it may hurt at the saying, but I would rather know the truth and be informed and changed by that rather than not. And so I said, so if there was anything, I really do truly want to know. And yeah, so we talked through, and there were some things that were there that were concerns that the person had. I think some of them were misunderstandings, and expectations that were probably not set up in the right way, or understood in the right way, something like that. Anyway, the long and the short of it is, my purpose was not to talk her out of doing or whatever. It was to listen, to understand, maybe under the right circumstances, to clarify if I needed to, but really to understand so that we could get better. Fast forward, I think 48 hours, they had used a different company, and I think they realized, oh, the,
I know that one.
that that maybe the grass wasn't quite as green on the other side. And I'm not, and it was one of those things where I think because I had listened and because I really was truly wanting to say, how can we be a better organization? They called us back and said, what can you do for us?
Yeah.
And hopefully, this time, because of that understanding, we can meet some of the expectations, possibly in part by being really clear with what, that we're on the same page
Sure.
in understanding things. But it was the listening, it was the listening part, that ultimately, I think was the difference maker in this, in many ways, and I sincerely, when I called her, my heart at the time was, how can we help you? And not in winning you back. I mean, that would be lovely if in situation, but it was really, how can we help you in your transition?
I love
How
that.
can we do the right thing, for you, because we care about your mom, not as a number, but because we care about your mom, and so, it is interesting, how that so often is the thing that does make a difference, both in clients and with our employees. So
Absolutely.
yeah, anyway, that's probably a good thing to end with, as far
I
as,
think so.
yeah.
Absolutely. And
um
for those of you listening, if you have ideas for subjects that you would like Doug to talk about or bring guests in, please let us know. All that will be in the show notes. And I'm going to try to get on schedule with Doug so that we bring you this podcast at the same time each month. And no, I don't have dementia. February
you
just
have
always confuses me. It's like, I don't know why.
and
It's,
heaven forbid if there's an extra day thrown in.
well, my mother was a leap year baby. So,
Oh, was she?
yeah. She
She,
wanted me to be born on the 29th, except that year was not a leap year. So I don't know how that could have happened. Anyways, I want to thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again next month. Take
All right,
care
take
now.
care. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.